Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating mechanics of how we earn, spend, and save money. We're breaking down the core ideas behind Keynesian consumption theory. Because, whether you realize it or not, there's a highly predictable psychology driving what you do with your paycheck. And we're going to map all of that out visually today. Here's our roadmap. We'll start with our protagonist, dive into the equation, look at the ratios, explore Keynes' psychological law, chart out savings, and graph intuition, and finally, wrap up with a quick mini-test.
Section 1. The protagonist. Ravi earns and spends.
Let's introduce our totally relatable protagonist, Ravi. So, Ravi just got paid. The immediate question we have to ask ourselves as we look at his bank account is, does he spend every single penny he makes? I mean, it's the fundamental question of consumer behavior, right? Does all that incoming cash immediately go right back out the door? Moving on to Section 2. The equation, demystifying the consumption function. Now, common sense tells us Ravi spends some and saves some, which brings us to the actual math of the consumption function, C equals A plus BY. It beautifully represents the basic, totally predictable relationship between the income you bring in and the consumption you put out. Let's break down this alphabet soup, shall we? C stands for total consumption. A represents autonomous consumption. B is the marginal propensity to consume, basically the slope of our line. And finally, Y stands for income. Once you know what the parts actually mean, it becomes a really powerful tool. Let's look a little closer at A, that autonomous consumption. You'll notice A absolutely does not equal 0. Why? Well, because even if Ravi loses his job tomorrow and his income drops to exactly 0, he still has to eat. He still has to survive. He's going to consume goods by using up his previous savings or by borrowing money. So autonomous consumption always exists, even at 0 income. Section 3, the ratios, a deep dive into MPC and APC. Let's look at the crucial distinction between these two metrics. First up, we've got the MPC, or marginal propensity to consume. This tracks exactly what you do with your extra income. Like if you get a bonus of $100 and you spend 80 of it, your MPC is 0.8. Then comparing that, we have APC, average propensity to consume, which is simply your total consumption per unit of total income. Now, generally, your APC stays higher than your MPC. Why is that? Well, it goes right back to that autonomous consumption we just talked about. Your total consumption is constantly being pulled up by the bare minimum spending you absolutely need to survive. Section 4. Scaling from micro to macro. Zooming out from personal finances, we uncover a fascinating universal rule, Keynes' Psychological Law. It basically states, as income increases, consumption increases, but less than proportionately. Think about it. If your income suddenly jumps by 100%, your consumption might only jump by 80%. You don't scale up your spending identically to your earnings. As a result, your extra spending is always a fraction of your extra income, meaning your MPC is always going to be greater than 0, but strictly less than 1. All right, Section 5, savings and graph intuition, flipping the coin. Now, this brings up a rather obvious puzzle. If you aren't spending at all, because as we just learned, your MPC is less than 1, what happens to the rest? Calculating your savings is actually incredibly straightforward. S, or saving, simply equals Y minus C. What you don't consume, you inherently save. And that unlocks what the source refers to as the ultimate super trick and the gold relation in economics. Your marginal propensity to consume plus your marginal propensity to save will always equal exactly 1. They are literally two sides of the same coin. So if you know your MPC is 0.8, you instantly automatically know your MPS is 0.2. Every single extra dollar is accounted for right here in this golden rule. If we map this out conceptually, it follows a really specific 3-step flow. First, you draw a 45-degree line starting right from the bottom corner. This line represents a hypothetical world where consumption perfectly matches income at every single level. Second, you plot your actual consumption curve. Crucially, this curve starts above the origin because of that autonomous consumption we talked about earlier. Remember, you spend even when income is 0. It slopes upward, but flatter than the 45-degree line because of Keynes' law. And finally, step 3, you find where those two lines actually cross. That precise intersection, that is known as the break-even point. It's this magical moment where your actual consumption perfectly equals your income. And because you're spending exactly what you make, your saving at this specific point is exactly 0. So, pro tip, any question you ever encounter that mentions a scenario with no saving is directly pointing you to this break-even point.
Section 6, the mini test. Put your knowledge into practice. Okay, let's lock in your learning. Question 1. Think back to our gold relation. What do the marginal propensity to consume and the marginal propensity to save actually add up to? Is it A, 0, B, 1, C, 2, or D, 100? Go ahead and lock in your answer. Moving right along to question 2. Apply that super trick directly. If your MPC is 0.7, what is the remaining MPS? Are we looking at A, 0.3, B, 0.7, C, 1, or D, 0? Remember the 2 buckets of extra income.
And finally, question 3. What is the defining condition of the break-even point? Is it when A, saving is at its maximum, B, consumption is at its maximum, C, saving equals 0, or D, income equals 0?
All right, let's see how well you scored. The correct answers are, for number 1, it's B. They absolutely always add up to 1. For number 2, it's A. If MPC is 0.7, MPS has to be 0.3 to complete the whole. And for number 3, it's C. The break-even point is defined by saving being exactly 0.
Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. We've seen that autonomous consumption means individual spending always outpace savings when income drops to 0. But how does Keynes' psychological law scale up beyond Ravi? How does this inescapable dynamic of consumption and saving shape the financial health and perhaps the massive debt of entire nations? It's a real game changer to consider next time you think about the wider economy. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.